Welcome everyone to another wonderful session of 30 minutes with a modern mystic. And today's topic is suicide and euthanasia. Michael, how did you pick that topic?
How did I pick it? Well, there you go. Hi, folks. How did I pick this subject? I guess there's a lot of suicide taking place. Probably we're at a record high around the world. And it's therefore a fairly topical subject. And euthanasia, well, some people feel it's a sin, and same as they feel that suicide is. And so I felt that I would like to talk about that, and let's clear the air on, what is suicide? That's what I thought.
My first question, what is suicide?
Well, the whole idea, you see, actually, we're doing it again. We're talking about something that doesn't exist, because suicide basically implies that you're taking your own life. Well, you can't take your life. There's no possibility of that. When you're immortal, eternal, my son, you're stuck with it. And there's no way around.
From a soul or from an energetic perspective, I always feel like there is some almost like an addictive pattern to suicide. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Because we are a very addictive species. There's no question about that. And when your subconscious is incredibly simple and easy to fall into patterns of behavior, just to fall into them, it's very easy. And I know I've spoken to quite a few people who are very honest, and they easily have told me, oh, yes, I'm very addicted. So I avoid getting addicted, but I'm aware that I'm addicted to entertainment, to sunshine. My brother likes the sun, and he throws off all his clothes, and he's completely addicted to it. He couldn't stop doing it. He knows he's addicted to it.
Well, that's not a bad addiction, being addicted to the sun.
Well, there we are. I'm not going to say they're good or bad. I'm saying that we have an addictive nature. Anyway,
compared to the addiction to suicide,
you can get it. That's what I'm getting to. You can get addicted to suicide because, in fact, anybody who's suiciding in these times none of them are the first time suicide. Mostly the people who talk about it and hesitate a long while might have only suicided about once. But when you suicide, it takes you away from the body. So instead of being metaphysical and physical, then you become metaphysical only. It puts you back into more of the same. In other words, you're the creator of your life while you're in your physical body, and you're the creator of your life while you're out of the physical body. And so you follow the pattern of your physical life. And so when you so-called die, but in fact, the word is transition. When you go through the transition from physical, metaphysical to metaphysical only, then you continue on living your life very much the way you see it. And gradually that illusion breaks down a bit. Anyway, we'll leave that. Eventually you have to incarnate again. It's simply you're on the wheel of life, the cycle of life, and you have to incarnate again. And invariably, if suicide was running away from the situation you were in, then you will be back in a similar situation at a certain time in your next incarnation. No. It will be easier that time to suicide. And then when you've done it about 6 times, it will get difficult to face the situation that frightens you. It will be difficult to do it without suiciding because it becomes such a powerful habit.
Is there something like a spiritually viable suicide, or something that it would be okay, like a situation where it'd be okay to commit suicide?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at first thing, why isn't it okay? It's your body. Why isn't it okay? Well, that comes from Christianity. So we were given this monstrous lie by Christianity that it's a sin to take your body. What they didn't say, we can take your body because we have the Inquisition. We love taking your body.
Which now swiftly moves us over to the topic of euthanasia, right?
Well, no, we shouldn't. We haven't finished with suicide yet.
Well, but now we're kind of touching on it.
We're sort of touching there, but I mean, the difference between suicide and euthanasia today generally means um, assisted dying. You know, in other words, they help you by giving you an injection. So it's assisted, and assistance in dying. But I, for instance, knew a woman named Narelle when I was in the community, and Narelle came there, and I was offended by her immediately because she had hair that was dyed yellow, red, and blue, dark, all of it. And, you know, that looked like crazy. And I quickly realized she was crazy. But as I began to move away from impatience and aggression with her to more compassion, and it was quite a journey. I wasn't a naturally compassionate young man. As I moved through that, I mean, one of the incidents that helped me was I was out in the field hoeing thistles away from young trees we'd set. And she would come out and stand right next to me in my space, right next to me. Here we have 20 acres around us, and she has to stand right almost on my feet. And I pushed her away several times, quite hard. And then I finally said, Narelle, what is the problem? You've got all this round here. Why do you have to stand so close to me? And this was a big shock. She said to me, because there are nice things around you. I said, what do you mean nice things around you? She said, there are little birds and rainbows and there are beautiful things around you, which surprises me because I wasn't a very nice person. But anyway, I said, so what's round you then? And what she said shocked me. She said, serpents and reptiles and toads and ugly things. And I suddenly realized in that moment she was looking at an astral level, and I was completely shocked, and I felt this compassion come up, and I thought, oh my God, what do I know? One of those beautiful moments when you realize you know nothing. And so I stopped my bad attitude to her and began to feel compassion. And I talked to her to see if I could help. And apparently when she was about 19, a genetic change took place in her body, and every cell of her body to a degree changed. Her whole hormonal system changed, and this horrible genetic thing that is a form of non-compo mentis, a form of mental illness, just swung in when she was about 19. And she told me it's incurable and she'll have it all her life. And she's either on drugs, prescription drugs, and doesn't know whether she's an Arthur or Martha, or she's not. And she has these terrible, terrible depression beyond anything we could probably comprehend. And my heart went out to her. We tried all sorts of things to get her back to the Prince Henry Hospital in Sydney, which was about 8 or 10 hours away. And, you know, we got her back there once and for more treatment. And, you know, this is amazing. All she wanted to do was get back to the community. And she walked outside of the hospital 10 hours away, stood in the middle of the small road, stopped a vehicle. They said, what do you want? She said, I want to go to Bellingen and to the homeland community there. And the man said, I'm going to that homeland community, hop in.
Wow.
I mean, could you do that in the middle of our largest city? Find the one person probably who's going. That's what focus can do, whether your mind is completely changed or not. That's what focus did. She wanted to get back there. Anyway, eventually we got her to a doctor nearby, and he told us there's no way, that nothing can be done. There's absolutely nothing. And finally we asked her if she would go back, and Trini begged her. And she said, she was in a sane moment. For you, Trini, she said, I'll go. And she went back to Sydney, and the next thing we heard, she'd committed suicide. And I tuned into her straight away, and I felt that soul was free. away from the illusion and delusion. In that moment, I knew that this whole thing that the church put on us is just not real, that it's a sin. There was nothing else she could do, either crazy or drugged. That was her choice for the rest of her life. And there's no way she had to live that. And people say, oh, you've got to live this through to the end. That is just crazy talk. You know, this is our body. The soul we are and who we are is completely immortal. We can't commit suicide, but we can say, I'm going to leave this body. It's not working for me. We can do that.
What is it then that determines whether a suicide would be in line with our soul's best interest and or not?
Well, with Narelle, I tuned into her and I just felt joy and freedom from her. And there was no darkness, there was absolutely no scent of a sin. But you see, all what we call sin today is all based on the churches, and they decided what sin is. You know, when you step away from that, you're like, my God, there's a freedom when you step away from the crap that they brainwashed us into over centuries that our parents believe, and therefore we grow up believing. And not all of us, but I was one of those who did. When you get away from that, so the line between suicide and euthanasia, what is it? Well, euthanasia is generally toward the end of your natural life. You think, you see, there again, I'm saying at the end of your natural life. There is no end to our natural lives. We're brainless in our language. We don't know how to communicate truth anymore. We communicate illusion.
Well, I'll try to go back to that question that I asked before. How would you?
So, well, the thing is with euthanasia, well, I'll have to say, you're at the end of your physical life. You're coming to the end of it. You're probably in a terminal illness, or you'll die, or you're in terrible pain, and there's no way back. It's all terminal. And then assisted. Wow. Excuse me. So assisted. Okay. So let me just finish. Let me finish. Assisted dying is what we call euthanasia, and I'm 100% for it. When you're at the end of the road, as it were, there is absolutely pointless just laying there for another month or two, because all your relatives are emotionally attached to you and they don't want you to die, because then you'll be gone. And so as far as they're concerned, you could lay in agony another month or three. That's fine, but you're still so-called alive.
Let's maybe take a step back. What's the process of, I mean, we had the module about dying 2-3 weeks ago, I think. What would be the natural occurrence of things, the moment of your death, or like how would your death be brought about by your soul, so to say, onto your body, into your physical life? And let's compare that to suicide, because suicide usually is something that begins in our mind, right? So we make the decision, our intellect, our will makes the decision, okay, I'm going to end my life. And then we put that into action, and it ends our physical life. Now with natural death, our soul, I suppose, says, okay, lesson learned, this one is over, time to leave this body. And then if you're super conscious, if you are a very spiritually evolved being, you might feel that, and you might just, lay in bed or meditate or whatever and leave your body consciously. And if you're not, something will happen to you, right? So in a way, that is suicide too. It depends on the definition, right? If you look at these spiritual teachers, these gurus that leave their body, that could be termed suicide as well, right? Because they are consciously leaving their bodies.
Whereas I have no problem with the concept or term of suicide, consciously leaving your body this is what I'm trying to say. Suicide actually is. You make a decision to leave your body, and the whole term suicide is wrong, because it's like you're killing yourself. You're not. you're simply leaving your body. Your life's going to continue. And so when you get to the fifth dimension, you don't do it that way. You simply, when you're 200, 300, 400 years old, and you realize everything I need to express, everything I need to express in this dimension, I've done. I'm now ready to move on. You're a much, much, you're a being of a far greater depth of insight and wisdom and knowledge and knowing of life. And it's now time to move on. So you let your friends know, and they've suspected, and we're going to have a wingding party, or I'm going to go gracefully and dignified, but you simply leave your body because that's all it is. You don't have to have a ceremony to leave your car. You get in your car and you exit your car. We get in our body and we exit our body. But the thing is, we are so bound down by ignorance and superstition and religion, religious lies that have been put on us to control us. You know, true religion sets you free. That's what I always understood religion was, to set you free. The ones we have don't. It encapsulates you in a belief that holds you lifetime after lifetime in the idea that it's a sin to suicide.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that suicide, or if we want to maybe rephrase it, ending your physical existence in that specific character or identity or body, is okay if it comes from a place of consciousness.
Oh, that's definitely what I was getting toward as well.
Right.
I mean, most suicides, as we call them, are running away from.
And then they're not okay, karma-wise, or
well, no, it's perfectly okay, but it's going to bring you back to the same situation.
Right, without judgment. Yeah,
Let's get one thing clear. God is love. All of stuff that Christianity's talked about has nothing to do with God. God is love. Love does not judge or punish or do anything.
To stick with your words, maybe we can say it doesn't work.
Finish. Because we're the creator of our life, we're the creator, then we are going to voluntarily come back because I want to fix this before I move on. I've got to fix this. I don't care how long it takes. I'm eternal. I've got to fix this. Of course, we get born and we forget all that, if we ever knew it in the first place. Right. And in other words, death does not take away ignorance. Sorry about that.
In other words,
it doesn't take away habit. It doesn't take away attachments. It was designed to, but it no longer does that because we're super attached. We're Spider-Man. We've got glue all over us, attached to everything. And so when you die, when you run away from, we'll call that suicide. When you realize this situation is hopeless, I want to move on. I'm going to move on. Whatever I invoke, I'll move on. And you end your life because you want to embrace the next step, then it's not. And you'll find that, wow, where's all the bad stuff? There won't be, because you had a completely different frame of mind and a different state of consciousness. In other words, and equally, because you've got to remember in all this, in every moment of your life, you are creating the direction and content of every moment of your life. That's okay. Whether it's suicide, whether it's euthanasia, you are directing the content and direction. It's you. You're doing this. But if you're running away from, obviously you're going to come back and deal with that. But if you're stepping forward and say, okay, let's bring it on. This situation doesn't take me anywhere and is not going to. I'm in the middle of the ocean, the ship is sinking, and I might just well jump in and breathe water because I'm not going anywhere, as be eaten by sharks. And so whatever, I mean, I'm making it up. But the point is, you're moving forward and you're doing it consciously. And probably it's okay even to be afraid. As long as you move forward, you don't let your fear dominate and dictate your life.
There are a couple of things I'm a little hesitant about. Like, one is violence, right? I mean, violence, yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, any type of violent act causes some type of repercussion, whatever. You might call it karma or whatever you want to call it.
We have violent language now.
That's true. And so when you when you understand suicide as an act of violence towards your own physical body, then that
Why do you determine that?
Well, because you would.
Is it an act of violence to step out of a car?
No, but that would not, stepping out of it wouldn't involve any physical harm to your body, I suppose. Stepping out
Let's
of it
say,
would be what I mentioned before, when you are spiritually aware and you decide, okay, this is it, and you're just leaving your body. In that case, perfect. But if that's not the case, but you find yourself caught in some situation and you have some awareness that you consciously want to leave this body, but you're not, because whatever, you can't, and then you decide to physically take measures to close your body down, so that I think is an act of violence. Or would you disagree?
well, when you consider the situation they're in, like let's take Narelle, who I knew. She's in a situation where her mental and emotional bodies have turned against her and they become violent. They're no longer running normally. So for her to take sleeping tablets and just sleep her way out of it and stop breathing, I really can't see that as an act of violence. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that as an act of violence because she was in an untenable situation. What was she going to learn? Some people say, well, that's her lesson to learn. How do we know that? If you took away the Christianity, how do we know that? Maybe the lesson was, hey, you don't have to do this. We always look at it, it's a sin to take your life. That's so deeply ingrained. Whereas if you're creating your every moment, the content and direction of your life, this is no more than the content and direction of your life. It's not in your physical life, it's your life, your whole life, your eternity. We are creating the content and direction. And so I don't see that's a violence any more than going out to paint your house and falling off the ladder and landing on your head and accidentally killing yourself. That's a violence.
I see your point. I tend to disagree in some way, and in others I understand. I'm not actually sure, but the thing, or yeah, I mean,
So where you disagree, and I'm not trying to get agreement, but where you disagree, what is your counter
well, so my disagreement would be in the sense that I feel deeply that as long as we are alive, as long as we have a physical body, there is something to learn. And then that the moment we are leaving this body, that lesson ends. And that moment is determined by our high self, right? By our soul.
But wait, if you're coming back to a physical body again, do you think your lesson's gone away? Of course
No,
it hasn't.
No.
You've got to take eternity. We see it like, oh God, how long am I going to be dead? Well, A, we're not. And B, we're talking with our guides and saying, you see what you did here? You see what you did? I'm sorry, but you were running away from the situations of life. Now you're going to have to go back and deal with those similar situations. So you're not escaping anything. You're not avoiding or escaping your lessons. You're just spreading it out over a time scale, and it's a learning curve, the whole lot.
I mean, in your friend's case, the question would really be what could she have learned if she had stayed, and maybe, I don't know, maybe nothing. Maybe it would not have made any sense, right?
Maybe what she would have learned at the end of a long life was, oh my God, you mean I didn't need to do that?
That's a possibility, yeah. But don't you feel like there is a degree of violence involved in killing your physical body?
Okay, well, let's say there is a degree of violence, and you're driving away, and you're on your way home, and a car broadsides you, and you're killed violently and almost ripped in half. So is one better than the other?
It would both be self-inflicted in a metaphysical picture. That is true.
Self-inflicted metaphysically, you were there, but that doesn't make it bad and wrong. It just means, and generally, when we say self-inflicted, there would be a deep state of confusion, and in that person, a state of discord. Like harmony doesn't go and have violence. It doesn't meet with violence. Harmony and violence don't dance in the same ballroom.
But if it's okay, I mean,
discord and confusion and violence, they dance in the same ballroom.
Right, I agree.
So all I'm stating here, all I'm stating is that suicide is not a sin against God or yourself. It is not a crime. It's not an avoidance either, even though most people who suicide are trying to avoid. They'll learn that they can't avoid.
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that. I don't disagree with that. I mean, the only thing that there is, I think there are consequences, right? To whatever we do and decide.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. Everything is cause and effect. Right. You know, when the car broadsides you, you've sown the cause, you're just not aware of it. But you commit suicide, shall we say, and you've sown the cause and you'll reap the effect. The effect doesn't need to be violent. You've just come back, and in the situation, you find the inner strength and you take yourself through it instead of suiciding. Eventually, you have no choice. Eventually, you're going to do, after a while, the sort of thing you think, this is amazing. I get deja vu regularly. I keep feeling I've done this before. It's like an inner voice is saying, whoa, dummy, you have.
I mean, if we go back to that violence discussion, one could ask, okay, what's the difference in terms of the degree of violence between killing myself with a gun or killing my wife with a gun? Right? It's the same degree of violence, just that it's inflicted upon another person, which that makes it a lot different. But then if you look at it metaphysically, we're all one, so you could get into tricky territory there.
That now it's an interesting speculation.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing by accident and nothing by chance.
Right.
And so you basically could not go and deliberately kill someone without you have a prior agreement that this person, because you can't take the body from another person without that soul's permission. So that gets interesting.
That's interesting. So on that level, there is only suicide on that level. Then that's funny.
In every war, you can't kill another person without their sole permission. So those two people who come into conflict, or the groups that kill at long range, which makes it more complicated with weapons that kill people you can't see, but they have been fighting and killing each other for a long time. This is not a new process. They're the same souls locked in rage and anger and blame and revenge and kill. You know, the repercussions of suicide as on a violent soul, because we're young souls. So some people get the idea we're all wise and unknowing. We should listen to the soul. No, the soul is young. It's still learning wisdom. It's still learning insight. It's still growing. And it will be growing for a long time. But gradually it will leave the violent part behind. But we're still in the stage of the violent part of this whole growing process. We're the most condensed part of humanity. In our galaxy, in our universe, where the humanity is the most condensed and the most dense vibration, the most dense frequency. You know, that's another subject, and I'm not going to go there now. But so generally speaking, in the simple terms, yes, suicide is not a good idea, and I'm not ever saying it is. But euthanasia, many people are so deeply indoctrinated by their religion that if they have to just press a button that will release the drug into their blood system, which will gradually let them go to sleep and die. If they have to press a button, they consider this is suicide and it's a sin. And so many of them daren't press the button because God will punish them when they die. Now, why would you put that program into a human being? It's ridiculous. The Christianity and the way it's been expressed is going to have a lot to answer for. Trust me, it's going to have a hell of a lot to answer for. The woman who says we can't use conception to a peasant husband in South America, and so dies having the 10th or 11th child because the Pope has said conception is a sin, and so she dies believing
abortion.
that.
You mean abortion, right?
No, I don't. No. Sorry, I mean that
abortion
not
is a
abortion.
sin.
Sorry.
You wanted to say abortion is a sin? That's what they're saying.
No, I meant to say that contraception is a sin.
Oh yeah, contraception. Oh yeah. Yep.
Contraception is a sin. I said conception. Contraception is a sin, and they die on their 10th, 11th, 12th child because the Pope has said it's a sin. I mean, and the fact is that tens and hundreds of thousands of peasant women have died with that belief. That's got to be accounted for in the Christian church one day. We have made such a quagmire out of life with the craziness of our ignorance and our beliefs. Our beliefs. I still say, way back in you, there's a Catholic itch somewhere.
Yeah, I guess we all carry them, yeah. I mean, going back to the difference between somebody who steps out of their body consciously as someone who's spiritually mature compared to somebody who either commits suicide or decides to have euthanasia, I would say that the latter two groups experience a high degree of suffering, right? They experience a high degree of something painful compared to that person.
You mean when they emerge in the new reality?
No. I mean the reason, or somebody who would decide to commit suicide or decide to have euthanasia would usually be somebody either in pain or whatever, in a situation where they just feel like.
Usually you could say the suicider is suffering emotional and mental pain,
right,
and the euthanasia is suffering physical pain.
Okay. And then compared to that, someone who is, let's say, spiritually advanced and is able to just step out of their body, they don't have any of that. For them, it's just a soul with identity or self awareness, where they say, okay, I'm out of here.
They step into like a situation where there are people around them, and welcome back again, and you did pretty well this time. You had a nice innings, didn't you? And yes, and it's a beautiful experience. And yet, if we took away once again the Christian given fear of death, because paganism didn't teach it. What's called wicked, the paganism, that didn't teach a fear of death. No animals have a fear of death. They don't even have a belief in death. When we were given this belief in death and then the fear of death, then you began to create the pain of death. Because if you have no fear, where you have no fear, you do not create pain and suffering, mental, emotional, or physical.
But then again, if you had that consciousness, you wouldn't even consider suicide an option to end your suffering, right?
Well, there you go.
There you go.
But on the other hand, if you had that consciousness, you wouldn't be suffering. Yeah.
Round and round it goes. So how about dedicating, I mean, we've done half an hour already or a little more, but how about dedicating maybe 5 or 10 minutes to helping those who maybe are in a situation where they either have someone who committed suicide or who's in a situation where they want to commit suicide, or maybe they themselves find suicidal tendencies in themselves. what would you say to them is something good to do?
Okay. I would say to them, if you're contemplating euthanasia and you're in a downward spiral of your, and you're in a terminal downward spiral into pain, do not be afraid of euthanasia. There is no sin or crime or committed, and you can go freely. But that's a very different one from suicide. And I would say to you, suicide is not a crime, but it is like a bungee cord. Suicide is the moment you jump. You reach the end of the cord, and now you're in another place, and it's neither heaven nor hell. It's the place you're making. And now the bungee will stretch, and suddenly you're whipped back up. And you've been down there for an indeterminate time, because there is no time. And then you come back up, and then when you reach where you started jump from, you're back in, you've incarnated again. How many times do you want to do the bungee jump? That's what you've got to ask yourself. And if you are facing a situation that this time you have the energy on your side, if you're contemplating suicide and you think that you can't do it, you'll create that to be right because you're the creator. But realize you're the creator and realize I can do this. I can move through this situation and I can end this cycle because I've got a feeling I've suicided before. I was in Germany once giving a weekend seminar and a woman came, and at the end, well, there were many women, but at the end, this young woman came up to Carolyn and myself, and she said, "I'm so glad I came." And we smiled. She spoke perfect English, and we said, "We're glad you came." And she said, "No, you don't understand." She said, "I was ready to commit suicide, and I heard a piece of paper blew across the street, and I picked it up, and on it was an announcement that you were doing this weekend seminar. And instead of going home and suiciding as I decided to, I thought, well, this is interesting. I found this. I will go there because it's the next weekend." And so she said, "UK, I've come here." And she said, "And you've been wonderful, and everything you've said hasn't really done anything." But she said, and do you know, I can't think of it. She said, "You said one sentence, one particular sentence," and she told us what that was. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was at the moment. But she said that one sentence set me free. And I realized I will. Oh, yes, she said, when you were talking about oneness of all life, she said, when you were talking about the oneness, as you talked about the oneness, I felt it. I felt that connection. I felt the connection with you. I felt the connection with life. She said, and I'd never heard of such a thing. And she said, that moment, I knew I will not commit suicide. So she said, I just want you to know, you haven't talked me out of suicide. You showed me a different way. And she gave us a hug and walked away. And I thought to myself, wow, it made me feel good, I have to admit. But you just don't know what words are doing and how they can change the situation. And for her, yes, absolutely. The key word was oneness. She said, you explained it, we're all one consciousness. She said, it changed everything for her. I didn't ask her why, because that was irrelevant. That was her knowing. And so suicide is just it's just round and round the merry-go-round, and it gets less and less merry. And so I would say, don't commit suicide, not because of the fear of God's retribution or God's wrath, or it's a sin or a crime. None of those are real. That's just religious bullshit that's been poured over us for centuries and centuries. Even though, and it does prove that if you tell a lie long enough, people make it real, which is really sad. But it does mean, suicide, that you don't avoid the situation you're in. You will be back. And right now, the energies are with change and with growth and with empowerment. So you use the self-empowerment, use the energy you've got that you would use to commit suicide, use that and move yourself into the light. In other words, as much as you can, realize that you're not a bad person, you're not a wrong person, you're just rather challenged at this moment. And that a lot of people on the planet are being challenged right now. It could be the moment when you step from the old to the new. The old is the suicide, the new is deciding, no, I choose love. And that's what I would do. Choose love for yourself.
I think we shouldn't add anything to this. Now we might have to change the title of this whole format at some point, since we're continuously going beyond 30 minutes.
We do, don't we?
Yeah, but I think it's okay. Fair enough. Okay, thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you for listening. And suicide is not the wisest thing, but don't fear it. It's not a good idea, but don't fear it. In fact, I would honestly say, let go of fear and there's no need to suicide.
Nothing to add here. Thank you so much, everybody. As always, if you're enjoying this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video, share the channel, participate in Michael's courses, buy Michael's books, donate to Michael. Whatever you want to do, choose love.
I just would like to say I enjoy, for the first time ever, I'm not really a media person, social media person, apart from my Facebook. First time ever, Sascha showed me some of the comments. I like them. Keep them flowing. I like them. He'll show me more of them. And thank you.
See you next time.